Hello everyone, welcome to the next episode on Anubhav Learning Series. In today's episode, we will talk about how do you debug your SAP Fiori applications. As part of this session, we will look at some quick tips and tricks to debug your Fiori applications which are already deployed in SAP system. You can use the technique shown in this video for both standard as well as non-standard Fiori applications. Now, before you start understanding the debugging, let's understand some of the core concepts which you should know before you really get into the debugging of a Fiori app. So what is the prerequisite as a developer you should know before you actually get into the debugging of Fiori apps? So if you're just finding an issue with respect to a Fiori application in your company, you probably want to make sure that these concepts are first clear to you before you really get into the real stuff for debugging. So what are the prerequisites to debug a Fiori app? What are the concepts which you should ideally know to debug a Fiori app? So you should be aware of MVC architecture, which includes model, view, and controllers. You should know that where exactly we write our JavaScript logic, the processing logic for the application. You should be aware of OData part, where exactly what is an OData service used for the services. And now you should also be aware of component.js file with manifest.json. So these files, you should be aware what does the purpose of these files, and then little bit of JavaScript knowledge is required to also learn the debugging. Now, if you're completely new to these concepts, don't take worries. You can actually subscribe to our UI5 and Fiori training, where we are actually covering all these concepts from scratch without any prerequisites. But assuming that you already aware of these things, I will start with an example here to show you some debugging. So let's assume there is a Fiori application which we had built in so-called our Web ID development tool, and I've already deployed this Fiori application. And this Fiori application is using a real OData service from my SAP backend system. So I'll just quickly show you the OData service which it is using. So it's actually using an OData service called ZATS November OData SRV. This is an OData service which is created in my ABAP system, S4HANA system, which I'm already using it as part of this Fiori app. Now, together with that, this Fiori app is more like a master detail application, which includes master page and detail page. So this one is my master controller, view one, and this is my detail controller, which is so-called details.controller. So now with that, I have already deployed this in the Fiori Launchpad. So if you don't know how to deploy an application in SAP Fiori Launchpad and configure it, please click on the I button above, where I have already demonstrated this. If you want to know more about deployment and the building best practice deployment for your application, please also hit the I button now to check another video on component preload as well as deployment concepts of a Fiori app. Now, this app is now already available. As you can see, the URL for my Fiori Launchpad, you see it's a Fiori Launchpad URL. So this app is already deployed out there. Now, what I see is in this app, there are a list of products which are coming from an SAP system. And I click on any one of the product and I go to more details. And ideally, I should get supplier data over here on the right side. So as you can see, user complained and raised a ticket on my name saying that, hey, Anubhav, the data for supplier is not showing for a given product. So it's time for us to troubleshoot and find out what could be the cause of this issue. Now, as I already told you, the prerequisite, you should be well aware of routing concepts, route match handler concepts, binding concepts, all the basic concepts of SAP UI5 and Fiori, and then only you are eligible for a depth level of debugging to find out the root cause. So to do that, maybe I would press F12, so-called our development tool for browser. And in the sources tab of the development tool, you would find here all the source code. So if you just check it here, my application currently is deployed with some name. So let's investigate two more important characteristics of our application. The first is the name of the application with which it is deployed, and the second is the namespace of the application. Both of this information is readily available in Manifest.json. So if you come to the top, you can see here the namespace of my application is TCS Fin AP. That's the namespace, quite important. And if you come scroll down till the bottom, you see ABAP platform entry, which shows the name with which it is deployed in the ABAP system. It's called Debug demo. So these are all two another important critical information which we would need while we are doing the debugging. So now I come back, and you can see here in the sources tab, all the static reference or the sources will be loaded from the server where the app is deployed, and they will be visible here in the sources tab. Now, if I expand the first section, you see here there are more or less the standard SAP resources, which are like Bootstrap resources, which are loaded. We don't want to maybe debug these resources. We are interested to debug our Fiori app, actually. We are not interested in these resources. You see it's loading up all these resources over here. We're not interested. But hey, I don't find my my exact controller information, because in order to debug now this application, I need to know somehow the right side area, which is the details controller, and I need to debug my details controller. So even a refresh over here and show you, you would see that it won't show me exactly the information about my controller. And here you can also see now there's another issue. We just close this app now. Just close this and try to reload the app. So I just hit the refresh button out there, and this loads the app again. So now what is that we will check again, go back to F12, so-called your development tool, or you can right click and inspect. And now here in the sources tab, when you go back, you can see here system is loading some sources, and the most important thing here is to check our debug resource for our application with the correct name. So I cannot still see our app information. Maybe just do another refresh quickly. And after I quickly refresh again, you can see here it is showing now my Debug demo. Yeah, so that's exactly the name of the app which is deployed in SAP system. But when I expand it, you would observe that just showing me Component-preload.js. So it's not showing me my controller. So basically this is a minified, dirtified version of all the resources of our application. It is not showing me my individual controller. So the very first challenge here is to see the controller before you start debugging that controller, right? You need to load that. So for that, you need to go back to the Launchpad, just close the DevTools and just press Ctrl Alt Shift P. Yeah, that's the first step. And now it shows you some technical info about this application. Yeah. Now you need to now tell the system that, hey, please load my controller resources as separate files. So it may take a little bit of time to load those resources, but that's fine because we are probably want to do a debugging. So now I can click on this option called select a specific module, and now it will show you all the reference libraries and the files which the browser is going to load from the server, so that you can also easily debug those resources. So we are not interested in standard SAP bootstrapping files. We are more interested in our application specific JavaScript controllers. So as I also showed you about a minute ago, that you can check the namespace. So the namespace here is TCS Fin AP. So I can go back and search for TCS. So you can see TCS Fin AP. So I just expand this, and now you can find the list of your files in the application which you have deployed, and I can expand and also see the controllers which are available. So I will say I want to load these two controllers because I want to debug them. Just choose them and say apply and say okay, and now press F12. Okay, just keep an eye on F12 and watch out the sources tab this time. So when the system is loading the resources, watch out. So here, if you see this time, if I expand, wow, you can see our controller is loaded. Since right now only the view one is displayed, it's just loaded the view one controller. The moment I choose the view one, my routing triggers and it loads the detailed controller. So this is now the way, a quick trick to load the resources, the resources as a separate file, so it makes your life easy as a developer to debug those controllers. So it is loaded now here. So as you all know, whenever I select something on the master page, there is an event which triggers, and that's something which then calls our detail controller root match handler method. So in our example here, you can see in the init method, what is the name of root match handler? So this is our init method. The method name for root pattern match is Hercules. So this is our method name. I go to the Hercules method, and now you see here it's calling some kind of path, and then it's calling another method called bind view. And then in the bind view here, you see there's already showing a problem. You see cannot read the property bind element of undefined. So this is the way you can immediately find out where the problem is, and just in case you further have to investigate and debug, you can do that also. So what I do is probably set up a breakpoint on line number 89. So just have to click on line number 89, and maybe also want to set up a breakpoint on line number 97 in this bind view. So I also click here, and let's give a quick try. So I'm going to select another product, and as a result of that, you all know that concept of root match handler. It will trigger my root match handler method, and let's click. So there you go. Now it's hitting our breakpoint as a result of that, and you can see it is paused in the debugger. So this is a quick, easiest way to load the resource file properly and then make your breakpoint hit. And now you have a couple of options available here. You can see step over next function call F10. Now this F10 is equals to F6 in ABAP programming. If I do F10 here, it's like complete this particular statement and jump to the next call. Now the next one comes is F11. F11 is like a step into the function. A step into means, for example, if I want to, I don't want to run this function immediately. I want to go inside this bind view function and see what's going on inside. Then I will go with F11. Now, what about shift F11? That's basically step out of current function. So I don't want to debug anything further in the current Hercules function. Just want to complete this function and then go to the function which was called which was calling the Hercules function basically. So that's how I can jump over. This is equivalent to F7 in ABAP programming. And then we have also say F9, which is say one step. Then also you can at any point of time, let's say you have several hundreds of breakpoint and it's every time stopping on every click and you are kind of annoyed, then you can also deactivate all the breakpoints. Or maybe you are analyzing something, you found the root cause and now you further want to execute, simply just disable them and activate them any point of time. That's another good feature. As you can see, when I'm clicking, these points are becoming active and deactive based on the click. And then here another option which is very helpful called pause on exception. So whenever there is a problem, exactly it will pause on the same line. Yeah, so that's what system will do. So now pause on whenever an exception is caught, please pause. Now at the same time, you can see the watch points. In the watch point, it will show you all the variables which are in scope. Yeah, so you can also type in a variable. Let's say I want to check what is the value of my event O event. So I can just do that O event and press enter, and now you can investigate that event object right away. Yeah, so you can see this event object and it's getting this fruit ID as product set HD1010. So this is a very helpful option to actually analyze the data, and you see there are some targets and stuff like that. Very handy option to actually check the watch points. So you can also always do that. There's another way to explore this. You can just select your variable, right click on the variable, and there is an option called evaluate this in console. So you can see evaluate selected text in console. So just click on that. And now you can see it opens up a console right over here, and it shows you the O event right away in the bottom. Yeah. So this is another pretty handy and powerful option. You have it. Maybe again, I show you right click, evaluate in console, and you see it's opened it here. Now inside this console, if you see, we have something called parameters. So this parameter is containing further config, and the config is containing, let's say, a target table. Yeah, so now what you want to do is, maybe I want to go to event dot, and the moment I say dot here, it shows me code completion. So you can see I can go to this parameters, and then I can go to arguments, yeah, and press enter, and you can see it showing me the data. Yeah, so then maybe I can just go back to just parameters, and I can see further. I can explore these things. I can go inside further. Maybe I want to read this target thing, which is inside the config. So let's drill down further in parameters dot config dot, and now you can see again the code completion, and I want to just check the value of target. So now you see this target shows me an array. Now at times the array size is very large, it's a very big array, and you don't want, or you will see huge data here, and it's difficult to analyze. So what you can also do is you can say console dot table, and then inside that pass your array and press enter, and now you see it shows you in a beautiful tabular format. So this is another trick which you can use to analyze data of an array. And at times, you may have an array with, let's say, 50-60 properties, and you are not interested in all 50-60 properties. You want to just analyze one or two properties. It's also very handy. You can just say comma, and then you can say which property you are interested to analyze. You can just pass that, and it will only print that property for you on the UI. So this is also another very handy approach to analyze your variables during runtime, what's going on. This is a very, very helpful approach. Maybe you can just close this now. So we looked at the watch window, where you can see all the in scope variable values at runtime, and then you can also see the call stack, how the different methods are being called in sequence to reach to the Hercules. Okay, now maybe I'll just do an F10, just complete this step and move to the next one, and you see my program control is showing me where it is right now. So the first step is complete. Now maybe I don't want to run the bind view, I want to go inside the bind view, so I press F11, and now you see I'm inside the function. So it called that function, and then I'm inside the function, and I want to just go further inside the gate view, so I can do F11 again. And now you see it actually takes me to this is basically a standard API now, because we're calling this .get view. So this is a standard function of SAP UI5 which it is calling to get you the view object. That's okay. I want to do Shift F11, or I can also click on this button to just come out of the current function. Just complete this function, come out of it. Just click on this button, and now you're back to this method, caller method. And you can also see here the call stack. So we initially saw Hercules. Hercules is then calling the bind view. So this call stack is telling you in what sequence your methods are called. So basically, if you do a Shift 11 on bind view, you will simply go to the outside caller method back again. Yeah, so that's a Shift 11. You can also see it here, Shift F11. Yeah, so you can use these buttons, or you can use the shortcuts. I personally prefer to use shortcuts like F10, F11, Shift F11. These are some of the favorite shortcut. F8 to move to the next breakpoint. Suppose I want to just set up another breakpoint and just press F8. So it will stop to my next breakpoint. So if I say F8, you see it goes and hits until the next breakpoint is encountered. Now, just in case there is an exception somewhere, it will stop on that exception, because we have already activated this option called pause on exception. Yeah. So this, if you just choose it, then accordingly it will select. Now let's explore further. Now I just press F10. And let's explore this simple form. And what you observe here, this simple form variable in scope is undefined. And that's probably the issue, because since this object itself is undefined, on an undefined, on a null pointer object, you're calling another method. Now this simple form itself is null, it's empty. On this, you're calling a method bind element. Of course, this will lead to the problem, and that's what exactly happening right now when you are doing it. So if I also copy this whole statement, copy this, go to console, and you can clear the console and just paste this, and you see exact error. What you're getting is this is the problem. So I have just investigated and found out that the problem is with this simple form. System is unable to obtain the simple form object somehow. So let's do step by step now. Where is the in this statement, definitely there is a problem. So this whole statement is producing undefined, which means there's a problem. Now, as you can see here with my UI5 experience, I can tell that we are actually trying to get the object of simple form, and this is inside a fragment. So we are traversing through the DOM and then trying to get the object of the simple form from the DOM. So that's what this statement is doing. That's something which only with your UI5 experience you can do it. Trust me, you cannot achieve or cannot do a good debugging until unless you know the core concepts of SAP UI5. That's why I always influence or always emphasize on the fact that learn the UI5 in depth with all the concepts, so that you can become an end-to-end developer. Now, what I will do is I'll just take this whole statement, or maybe let's do step by step. So I'll take the first part of the statement and just hover, and you see it's producing something at least, which means there's no problem. This dot get view. Now I'll select the remaining next set of statements and then check, okay, this one is also producing something. Good. Let's do further selection. So I can also select up to get content of one, and now this one also is producing something awesome. Now let's do select this whole thing up to get item of one, and oh wow, this is also producing something. You can also take out this whole line up to, let's say, this guy. Copy this, go to console and put it here. So you can see that up to get content of one, there is something it is producing. Let's say something like bar. I think it's getting some icon tab bar, and then inside this icon tab bar, if I say dot get, and you see it shows me code completion. So there's a get items. So I'm going to call the get items, and you see it has got actually 3 items inside. So basically there are 3 icon tab filters inside my icon tab bar. Now which is the one we are interested? So they are getting the second one because index is 1. Let's try that step by step, and now you have got this one. Superb. Next step, now I go back and let's try to now do a get content. So let me just do just get content. In my console, I'm doing step by step evaluation, and now you see the get content produce only one object. Okay, it's just zeroth item. Only one object is there inside this get content. But the developer who has coded here has coded with get content of 5. Now, how come this developer, there is only one object inside that items, but how come the developer is getting the 5th object? There's no 5th object. There is only one object, which is 0th object. So probably at the time when the app was developed, there were maybe those 6 objects at that time, and they have coded according to that. But now those developers kind of remove those objects from the UI, from the XML view, or from the fragment, but they have forgot to remove or change this code, which is now causing a side effect. This is why I also, as part of my gold standard while coding, I strongly recommend to not use index-based programming, because index is subjected to change when your UI control hierarchy changes. Suppose you added 2 buttons and 1 input field. If you change the order of these objects, then your index will change. Or if you remove some object, the third object becomes second and second become the first, because one object has been removed. So index-based programming is not a good practice, though in this case they've done it. So what to do to fix it? As we can see, there's only one object here. There's no 5th object. So we'll simply go back and make it, change it to 0. So, but I don't want to make this change right away and apply it in the system. So right now I just make it during the debugging itself. So I just go back and change it to 0 here. Yeah, I just made the change in the debugger, and I do Ctrl S. You see this star indicates there's unsaved changes. Remember, these changes will not reflect in your backend system. This is just a pure local change, just to for you to ensure that everything is working smooth and fine. Just do Ctrl S. It will save it, and you see this warning, which indicates that this change is a local change, and now system automatically restarts the execution of bind view method. You see the control has come automatically here again. Now I press F10, 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 and let's explore. Oh wow, awesome, voila. You can see we have got simple form object, which means that was the bug. The index was a problem, and I hope this now bind element will work fine. I press F6. Okay, this all looks good. I press F8, just come out of debugger, go back to the UI, and wow, you can see the data is coming fine. So during debugging itself, I can just evaluate my variables. I can look at the call stack. I can check the variable values in the watch point. I can go and evaluate expressions in the console. I can change the values at runtime and save it and then test it immediately. This ensures me that my functionality is going to work with this change which I've made in the debugging. So I'm going to go back to our web IDE and then go to the details controller, the actual source code, and you see here this position we have to make it finally 0. I'm going to do Ctrl S in my web IDE, and let's redeploy this app back to the SAP system. So I'm going to right click and I say deploy this to my ABAP repository, and you see it's evaluating whether this application is already deployed. So are we going to update or are we going to create new one? That's something which system does it automatically. I hope you all understand what is web IDE tool and how to use web IDE tool to deploy your app to the SAP system. This is something which we covered already in the training. So if you are new to SAP UI5 and or maybe a basis guy, not so good in UI5 yet, you want to troubleshoot your applications, you can always go to my website anubhavtrainings.com, and there you can find our module on SAP UI5 and Fiori. This is the module name. You have to subscribe to this training to get complete end-to-end hands-on training. Trust me, even a basis people, even a functional guy can learn UI5 development end-to-end. Just have to have the basic analytical capabilities, analytical abilities, logical thinking, logical reasoning abilities, and a little bit of programming background. With that, you will be able to learn SAP UI5 and Fiori with zero prerequisite, zero knowledge of Java, zero knowledge of JS. Nothing is needed because we will cover every single thing as part of the course. Okay. Now coming back, you can see the deployment is still going on. You can see first it's doing a build, and once the build is complete, hopefully it will start the deployment. Okay, it's asking me that I'm going to replace these files with the new files. I say fine, please go on. And now you can see system is deploying our application once again. So we had looked at the step-by-step debugging. We fixed the issue in the runtime mode. We tested that, and then we come back and we made the change here in the actual code. And finally, we are deploying our app to the SAP system. So once this is complete, awesome. You see it's been deployed. And now I am going to go back and just refresh our app, reload our app once again. So I'm just going to change my URL correctly. So we don't need to, you see what happened when we chose those debug sources. System has added a parameter called SAP UI debug with our file names. Yeah. So we just remove this. We don't want to load these files because debugging is already complete. Yeah. And I can just simply reload our application from scratch. And I press enter. So it should load our application. Yes, it's loading the view one, and now choose the notebooks, go to the more details, and wow, you see the bug for supplier data is fixed now. That's really cool. Yeah. So this is what has been done now. It's been completed, and now we are able to see our data. Thank you so much for debugging tools in the browser. Remember, we are using here client-side JavaScript, and browser understand JavaScript directly, so we can debug right away in the console tools our JavaScript code and fix the issues. And then when we are insured enough, we can go back, make the final change, deploy, and port it to the production system. So I hope you like this video. If you think this video is helping you, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe on this channel, and please do leave your comments in the below comment box so that I can bring more content like this for you. I hope this was a pretty helpful session for you. Please do share with your friends and colleagues so they can also take benefit of this free session on Anubhav Learning Series. With that, Anubhav signing out. Thank you so much and goodbye.